People talk around here, I guess it'd be what more like you call hillbilly style or something, I guess. I don't know, just mountain talk.
Most of your local people have your mountain talk. That's the way you can tell the mountain people from your outsiders, by their language they use. Say, I'll see you over yonder. It means I'll see you like in Waynesville. It's a mountain talk kind of.
Never, nothing stops. It's like a singing, you know. We're kind of like we're singing. Lita said we're singing, not talking, you know.
Yeah, I like my moped.
Everybody hears about Greyhound County, don't they? How good the people is, how they'll help you. I run into people I don't know, never seen them in my life, and I help them any way I can. Somebody said one day, said, you'll get knocked in the head. I said, well, if I do, I'm just knocked. They're just good-hearted. Everybody you meet, just 99% of them. If I didn't live here, I'd move, wouldn't you?
Where you want to go on vacation?
If I was going to go on a vacation, I'd just stay right on you. Oh, yeah. It's one of mine is all the time, anyhow.
We are 20 years behind the whole country, but I wouldn't swap places with nobody. I feel much more comfortable here being 20 years behind everybody than I would be sitting in a lot of places and being so miserable. You don't like your neighbor, you don't speak to your neighbor, you're bitter with the world. Atlanta's a good example, or Raleigh. You drive down the street and everybody's wide open blowing their horns and don't know nobody and don't want to know nobody and don't care about nobody. It's quite a bit different up here.
Well, I lived in Washington, D.C. about 4.5 years, and I just seemed to be in hell with my back broke as live there. People are so good to each other here.
Many of the words and expressions in mountain speech are unfamiliar to outsiders. Scots-Irish settlers brought much of the vocabulary from Europe, but many new words and expressions were invented here by their descendants.
It's just somebody coming up with a strange word is what it means. I mean, let's say you're trying to get something done, you're building something, and you'll take a look at it, like the word "saigoglin." You're looking at it and it's all out of line, and you just might come up with the word "saigoglin." I do that myself. Can't think of anything right off, but I come up with a lot of new words myself. And so you get somebody standing around, they hear that, and okay, it's "saigoglin."
Say a carpenter has done a real poor job, and then you say, that's all saigoglin, you know, he didn't have his wall straight, or...
They'll stand back and look. If something like they say, that thing's saigoglin. They'll say, I want you to look and say, what is it? If you're building some kind of, he said, that's saigoglin right yonder. And said, that old road going up there, and said, that thing's saigoglin.
My grandmother, she's always talking about people being stout or gaint. She used words like peckerwood. If it's somebody she didn't like, she'd call him a peckerwood. If there's somebody she didn't know, but he's probably all right. She didn't have any animosity for him. She'd say he is a jasper. There's this jasper come by here this morning. I knocked on the door, you know. But if it's a salesman, there's this peckerwood out there on the porch.
It's like people used to, you know, like you go in the store and say, put it in the bag. The old people say you put it in the poke.
That's a bag. I used to go to the store, walk 2 miles to the store, and when I was a kid, and carry a 25-pound poke of flour home. That's flour, by the way, not flour.
And me and my 2 sisters and 1 brother, we'd be waiting on them at the house to get our candy. Saul, the older man I was talking about, had a little poke of candy. He said, well, I forgot to get anything. Boy, we'd scream. Oh, here it is.
Plum was a common word when I was growing. Plum this and plum that. And you plum over there. Well, he was just plumb wore out.
That copper mine, that vein, they tunneled under the ground, plumb out through here to Snowbird.
Like the wind was blowing, you know, a lot of air. They would say it's very Irish outside.
Irish, it means it's a little bit chilly outside.
It means it's Irish, that means it's chilly today. It's Irish today right now as we speak. The Irish blowing and breezy.
They go to, store and buy a Coke. They call them dopes back in. I don't know if you ever heard anybody say that or not.
That's what we drank when I was a kid. And it was called, they had Knee-High, they had Pepsi-Cola, Royal Crown Cola. A lot of them, that was dope.
Oh, a dope. You're talking about like a soda pop, soda water, yeah. Yeah, soda water, yeah, dope.
That's all they ever called them around here as a kid. I mean, that's...
Now, if you go up toward Ernestine's place up there, stop along there about where you turn up to Tony's there in them pine patch, right, and along with that log house, you probably see a boomer right there.
A lady come through, she said, oh, I said, that's a pretty boomer. She said, a boomer? What's a boomer?
You know what a boomer is, don't you? You ever see one?
What's a boomer?
They make a lot of chatting noises. They're about the size of a wharf rat.
A wharf rat?
Yeah, wharf rat. Big old rat.
A boomer is like a little squirrel. It's not a squirrel.
It's a mix between a gray squirrel and a chipmunk.
Except it's red.
Can you eat them?
Yeah.
She said, that's a red squirrel. I said, well, to me, it's a boomer. We always called it boomers.
Say it's no skull. I mean, that's old dad land. Won't grow nothing, you know. Call it skull. I don't know if you have heard that, or I know you have. Call it a skull. Poor land.
That's like a carburetor in my van, all gommed up with all that old dirty stuff.
Gom? Means like it's all cluttered up, gommed up.
Yeah, that means it's in a mess. That's what I would say.
They didn't know they were talking to such educated folks, did they?
I know.
Instead of saying yonder, you know, over yonder, you know, it's over yander. Do you ever hear that word, over yander?
Yeah, I say way over yander, yeah. Yeah, Mama used to come up to us when we was little and she'd say, goose or gander. She'd pull each year. You say goose, she'd say pull it you loose. You say gander, she'd say pull it way over yander.
Them little bitches, they all know me. They say yonder comes him a riding at Harley Davis. They think it's a Harley.
My name is Deborah Chauvin, and I'm basically from the Ninth Ward. I grew up on streets on St. Claude and Franklin and North Rampart near the Bywater section. And I went to school in Colton and Nichols.
My name is Sharon Marie Hadstill. I'm 15 years old. I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, in the Third Ward, which is the streets of Galvez, Miro 3rd, you know, like that. I went to John W. Hoffman Elementary.
My name is Clive Hardy, and I grew up in the Garden District. My family lived there. It wasn't an old Garden District family. They'd only been in New Orleans about 100 years. My grandfather having come from Germany in the 1880s.
I'm Robert Sonny Vaucresson, a native Orleanian. I was born and raised here in New Orleans in the 7th Ward. I attended all schools of the Sisters of Blessed Sacrament. We attended schools at Corpus Christi.
In a big, diverse city like New Orleans, there are many accents. Like a detective, you can listen to someone's dialect for clues to their identity, like what part of town they're from, how much money they make, or what racial or ethnic group they belong to.
There are a number of different dialects in the area, and there are all shades between them. I think the three major ones certainly are the downtown white, what is often called the Yat dialect, the uptown white, the upper class, upper educated southern speech, and the black dialect. But these shade into one another, and there are many features that they have in common.
I had a disastrous dove hunt last week, though. Went to the north part of the state. Thought we were going to do very well, didn't fire my gun, but that's averaging with my usual fishing trips. I've taken 5 fishing trips recently, and I've averaged less than 1 fish per trip, so that shows you what an expert fisherman I am.
The best way to identify, I think, uptown dialects is really by neighborhoods, which is what this is all about. And I think there's a distinct university section accent, there's a Carrollton accent, then you mosey down to the Garden District, stopping off perhaps at St. Stephen's Playground, that area around Camp Street. I think that it really depends a lot on locale, and it's really something that you, like a fingerprint, that I really think you don't have to be Henry Higgins or Higgins to decide.
I had an aunt that lived at 1313 First Street, which is just 1 block away from, that was Frank Strong's home, which was Jefferson Davis's old home, and I just don't think that the people in the Garden District have any accent.
I don't think that uptowners are aware that they have an accent at all, because they think that they are the true New Orleanians, and the way they talk is the way that New Orleanians talk, and that everybody else has a funny accent, and they all find it very amusing. Like, oh, I heard this woman from the 9th Ward, and they take their guests who come to see the architecture and the food, and it's sort of like, let's go somewhere and you can hear some of these people talk. Isn't this exciting? In the Irish Channel accent and the black accent, they find it amusing because it's sort of foreign.
Someone that stays up around Audubon Park or around the Garden District, you know, they talk totally different than someone that stays across the canal, way down in the lower 9th Ward. You can tell in different parts of the city.
Our ears seem to pick up these accents automatically, and we're quick to form impressions and make judgments of people every time they open their mouths.
They have this, like, proper slang to words that they say, because I was on Tulane's campus the other day, and I was listening to this little chick talk. Well, she was white, and she's like preppy, and everything is like, wow, man, and really, you can tell it's a big difference. Golly, yeah. Like, how much money do your parents have?
Most people know they don't speak the King's English, but they can always point to people they think speak even worse. If you don't talk what's called standard middle-class English, you might run into problems. In New Orleans, this could happen if you speak a black dialect, or if you talk the famous Brooklynese of the older city neighborhoods, the so-called Yat talk.
The problems that a non-standard speaker faces in dealing with the outside world is primarily one of economics, and that is speaking a non-standard dialect automatically makes one ineligible for employment in certain areas, because unfortunately speaking a non-standard dialect is frequently interpreted as being lacking in intelligence and lacking in education. And of course, this isn't always true.
There are people that work in our office that greet people, and we were just talking about that. They have this Yatty type dialect, whatever, and we were talking about how it's a bad impression when people first enter in our office.
For generations, black dialects were despised as slang. But more recently, the academic community has come to acknowledge the rich diversity of African American English and created a whole new area of study called Ebonics. For Mary Ziegler's students, it is a recognition long overdue.
Who's teaching our kids how to speak correctly? Who? I mean, who even taught our parents or our grandparents to speak correctly? It was against the law for them to read. So anything they picked up on, it was just by hearsay.
Right.
If you was never properly shown how to read and how to write, you do the best you can. You survive. And that's what they did.
Yeah,
that's what they
language
did.
that just came out of nowhere. It has roots in West African languages.
Right.
And people don't be trying to understand
the historical background of it.
Exactly.
Right.
It's not about this is bad and this is good. We got to get out of that dichotomous thinking. Right. It's not bad and good. It's about teaching our kids what will enable them to be more successful in life, but not sacrificing what they already know. Like if your son comes home one day after a long day at school, it says, "Mom," you ask him, "Son, do you have homework?" And your son goes, "I ain't got no homework."
Right.
Your son does not mean,
Mother, I do not have any homework.
Right.
This one means I ain't got no homework.
Exactly what
and
he said.
And it actually makes sense.
Right.
Folks just don't realize that when we be talking like that, we understand each other. And it's just a different way of expressing. Some things you just can't be saying in standard English.
As my students demonstrate all the time, they can read and they can speak in standard English, but when they get together, they prefer to talk in their own community language. And in fact, everyone really does prefer to speak in the language which identifies them with a particular community.
Dialect is just a variety of the English. No one really goes around speaking standard variety English. The people that are really talking to our kids about, saying, you all don't need to speak that, or what y'all speaking, or that's slang.
Right.
They're speaking their own variety. People do not know
the difference between slang and dialect. Exactly. And slang is so widely accepted by both communities. I mean, you really don't know. I never have tried to hide how I speak. That's me, and that gives me identity. I want to be me. I don't want to be like everybody else. And if my language identifies me as somebody else or as part of the AAVE community, that is just fine with me, because that's me and that's my history and my family history as well.
Yeah.
It's because of the influence of Africans in this country that English has developed in the way that it has. And in fact, it's the presence of Africans in this country that has caused America to develop the way that it has.